The Coast Starlight is one of Amtrak's long-distance routes traveling between LA and all the way up to Seattle for a total journey time of 33 hours. This features the beautiful sunny scenic California coastline up to the snowy tall timbers of the Pacific Northwest. But is the scenic experience worth your time? Well, that's what I'll be showing you today. Good morning from another sunny day down here in LA. Normally when I visit, it would be the standard to be flying back home. Well, what about taking the train part way? I've been wanting to try out long distance Amtrak for quite some time now, but more specifically the Coast Starlight, as it's the most appealing due to the reasonable duration, or at least I thought so. But today's journey starts here at Union Station, one of the great train stations here in America. I won't get into too much detail about the station, as I only got here about 45 minutes prior to when my train is supposed to leave, but many Amtrak trains start and finish their journeys here, including Amtrak's Surfliner, which makes a stop here. Additionally, there are Metrolink commuter trains, plus 3 LA Metro lines from the station. The ticket counters for Amtrak are right at the main entrance to Union Station, where last minute tickets can be purchased, as well as checked baggage to select stations along the whole route. But today, I'm just here to get a physical boarding card.
Yep, right here. Awesome. Thank you.
The Coast Starlight departs here every day on track 10, as seen by the permanent fixtures here. It won't be too much longer till the train arrives from the sidings. In the meantime, the morning rush hour is coming to an end, so it was nice to see the various Metrolink trains coming and going. Soon enough, the 8-car set comprising of Amtrak Superliners arrives from the sidings, making the next 33-hour journey all the way up to Seattle. Amtrak long-distance trains have 2 different classes: sleepers of either roomettes or bedrooms, and coach. There is no business class on these train services, but you'll soon find that the seat is more than adequate for the long-distance journey. Upon boarding, you're assigned a seat by the car attendant, as it's not first come, first served. This is based on where you and the other passengers are traveling to. There is a ton of storage for baggage here, with larger bags being stored downstairs and lots of space for smaller items and bags being right above every seat. Now leaving downtown Los Angeles, we depart exactly at 9:45 a.m. This Superliner car is part of the recent refurbishment, with new upholstery, which is looking pretty fresh. This seat is very generous and is ideal for these long distance journeys. This is mostly due to the generous amount of legroom. The tray table compensates for this and was nice and sturdy. This also has a nice seat back pocket and a footrest. There are 2 power outlets, both for each passenger, but isn't that great of a location for the person sitting in the aisle though. In terms of comfort, something that is essential for long distance train rides, there is no armrest between the 2 seats, but the recline was extremely generous, along with a leg rest for extra comfort, albeit this needs to be manually raised. Last but not least, there are some fairly narrow windows with curtains and a reading light. Not to mention, the padding of the seat was nice and comfortable. It's a nice change of pace leaving Los Angeles that's not LAX. It feels refreshing to get some new views from the ground. Dining on Amtrak for coach passengers has improved in recent years, with the opportunity to have a fully cooked meal in the dining car. I'll get into the details in a little bit here, but for the most part, your meals are coming from the Amtrak Cafe. This is unless you stopped at your favorite pretentious and frankly overpriced LA grocery store prior to getting on the train, which I got a steak and egg burrito with a protein shake. This tasted great, but $17 for the burrito was egregious. Not long after we left, the diner attendant comes around with reservations for lunch and dinner. As mentioned, coach passengers can have fully cooked meals along with the sleeper passengers. Although sleeper passenger meals are included with a ticket, whereas coach passengers pay $25 for breakfast and lunch and $45 for dinner. This is so you're not having to pay for microwave meals from the cafe. But this still has a decent selection of meals, snacks, alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages, all at some pretty fair prices. Before the train arrives in Oxnard, I'd highly recommend snagging a seat in the observation car right above the cafe. Coming up are hands down the best views in this entire journey. It fills up and seating can be at a premium, but don't be shy to sit next to a new neighbor, albeit some of the seats have some pretty limited legroom. These superliners have different types of washrooms. This one is the changing space, which has a nice wide seat. So far, so good in terms of cleanliness, but always double check that the door is properly locked, which they aren't very good, and the water pressure is a little high. Seeing the California coastline always looks great to see in photos, movies, and TV shows, but it truly doesn't do justice to actually see it firsthand. There's a slight tint to these windows with the obvious glare, but I'm truly stunned to see how naturally beautiful this is. I'd highly recommend taking the time to see this in person. Our first major stop outside the metro LA area is Santa Barbara. I've heard good things about this place for so long and would love to visit one day. This is kind of ironic considering how much I visit Los Angeles. The stop here is only for about 10 to 15 minutes, just to drop off and pick up some more passengers. As we leave Santa Barbara, the coastline becomes less populated and shows the true natural beauty of California. Maybe something not as natural, but still very interesting, we cruised by Vandenberg Air Force Base and the multiple space launch complexes, even with SpaceX being on site. I had no big issues with cell phone service along the whole journey, but there was the occasional blackout areas, especially in Oregon. Not long after you arrived in San Luis Obispo, or SLO as the locals like to call it, this is the first smoke stop of the journey, and is a great time to check out the whole train consist. The two engines hauling all the cars today are two fairly new Siemens Charger locomotives in the new Amtrak livery. These locomotives are the backbone of modern passenger trains here in the US and Canada, being used not only by Amtrak, but Brightline in Florida, different commuter lines on the East Coast, and now via rail in Ontario and Quebec. SLO is also the northern terminus for the Surfliner. Seeing how amazing the route was, I'd love to take this train in the future. Amtrak has wheelchair accessible washrooms with extra space, and this was so far so good. Leaving SLO and the evening glow filling the cars, now I'm having a late lunch. This was a salmon banh mi wrap with spicy mayo, also from Erwahan. Not my favorite, but still tasted pretty good, and again, a lot better than what you'd get from the cafe car. Right outside San Luis Obispo is Cuesta Pass. This takes us over to Santa Lucia Range and has some absolutely amazing views. I will note that the train is decently full now, even for mid-November, as this is the only rail service between SLO and the Bay Area. We picked up a 25-minute delay to let the very late southbound Coast Starlight pass us. By this point, it's starting to dwell on me on how long this train journey is, considering we haven't even made it to San Jose yet. Another hour and a bit went by, got some work done on my laptop, watched a handful of videos. Now it's time for dinner, as we finally enter the Bay Area. Amtrak's traditional dining is a pleasure to have on the West Coast, featuring a full 3-course meal service. You will be sharing a table with other passengers on this train, so don't be shy. The one complimentary alcoholic drink should help with that, which I got an IPA. Amtrak's famous warm dinner rolls are served along with the appetizer, which was a pearl shrimp tempura with a sweet Thai chili sauce. This wasn't too bad, but what was a true highlight was the flat iron steak, which is actually the only entree that's fully prepared and cooked on the train instead of being warmed up. This was cooked to a perfect medium rare, seasoned beautifully, and the mashed potatoes and vegetables tasted fantastic. And what better way to finish than a rich white chocolate cheesecake? I initially thought $45 was a bit steep for dinner, but considering how everything tasted, especially on a train, was well worth it. Going past the center of hell, or Levi's Stadium as is traditionally known, we are now not too far away from Oakland. We have a 25-minute stop here in Oakland, although I won't be traveling too far away from the station as it's around 10 p.m. right now. As we travel along the famous Embarcadero West Street towards Emeryville, I get a little bit worrisome. We're already 30 minutes late. The Coast Starlight train that left the day before us is 6 hours late. The cherry on top, a massive snowstorm on the California and Oregon border. This will actually be the last Coast Starlight train to make the full journey for the next couple days. Trying to get some sleep, despite the anxiousness, I brought out the blanket and pillow I took for my Starlux flight. Something like this is pretty essential for an overnight Amtrak train and coach. I had a mediocre sleep to put it at best, waking up outside of Mount Shasta around 8 a.m. from an older lady laughing like crazy from just sending voice memos on WhatsApp or iMessage or something like that. Hygiene is pretty essential on these trips. I'd highly recommend some body wipes, as the showers are only available for sleeper passengers. We didn't end up leaving the Mount Shasta area till around 1 p.m. This was due to a disabled freight train. As you might already know, a significant majority of train track is owned by freight companies in the US and Canada. I'd really hope and imagine that this delay wouldn't be as bad if it was the other way around, but that is very unrealistic. It took over 29 hours and we were finally across the state line into Oregon. A somewhat sign of relief that we're finally making some progress. Our next smoke stop, besides the improvised one we had near Mount Shasta, is Klamath Falls, Oregon. It's a chilly and windy 2 degrees Celsius here, far off from sunny LA where we started. As we skimmed along the edge of Crater Lake National Park, a complimentary meal was handed out for all passengers in the dining car. This was offered due to the major delay. It was a beef stew with a dinner roll, and you know what, it wasn't too bad. But after seeing some people on YouTube receive the same meal from the delay, this is just the stuff from the can. The cherry on top to all this, the refrigeration system in the cafe car broke a few hours ago, and all the perishable meals were thrown away. So I was gonna be hungry for quite some time. But on the other hand, it's truly beautiful to take a train through a snowy mountain pass in the winter, but the darkness of the evening slowly came in. I was honestly in a low. The annoying family next to me had a mother who had some stress issues and made her problems every passenger's problem too. But there was still an ounce of confidence in me. It took a couple hours to get my travel plans straightened out, as I just missed my flight out of PDX, and I really wasn't too sure on how I was planning to get home. Luckily, by the time we stopped in Eugene, things were looking a bit more optimistic. Eugene, Oregon is a familiar town for me, even being by this same train station a couple times when I was down here for the marathon twice. We really picked up the pace getting into Portland. By then, I managed to snag a seat on the first flight out of Portland back home to Vancouver, BC, and booked a hotel, which unfortunately I had to pay out of pocket for, and I didn't get reimbursed by Amtrak. Seeing the Portland skyline really lifted my spirits that this longer than planned journey was finally coming to an end.
appreciate you for real. Yeah. All right. Thanks again for your help. Have a good night.
I paid $107 for the refundable ticket, and an unrefundable ticket could be purchased for $92. For that price, was it worth it? Well, I'll save my final thoughts here in a minute. But in the end, this train arrived in Seattle at 3:30 a.m. 8 hours delayed. And when I got home, I received a $250 voucher from Amtrak for future use. Now, in all fairness, I am not the one to be talking to a camera at the end of a review or vlog or whatever you want to call it. I really, really hate being in front of the camera and talking away because I feel very self-centered about it. But I feel after this experience, like I need to air out all these thoughts fresh rather than just typing it onto a script right away. I've never, ever had an experience like that in my life. I've had some pretty miserable experiences, but that one has sincerely taken the cake. Let me kind of give you a rundown of kind of front to back. I don't know if I'll add this in or not, but the from LA the SLO San Luis Obispo, that was fantastic. Great views. I loved it. Loved being the viewing car and everything, and that was honestly like the biggest highlight of the trip. The point after, when you take around the huge bend around that was beautiful too, but that's more or less the highlight. Like I couldn't say anything nice after that trip. From that point on, just getting more and more towards the bay, I'm like, man, this is getting like really long. I know this is gonna be 29 hours, but this is like really, really long, and I'm questioning. I'm like, is this really a good idea? We get to the bay at like 10 o'clock. I'm like, I don't know. Like this is getting long, and seeing the other trains in front of me were progressively getting more and more delayed. I just knew that it was like, I don't know. Like I don't know if I'm gonna make it to Portland in time so I could catch my flight. And guess what? I knew I missed my flight. Ended up having to get a hotel. It's being stuck in the middle of Northern California for like 7 hours. That was brutal. Like a lucky thing, most that morning I slept. The whole time when it was coming into Eugene, it was in like the mountain passes of Oregon, I was debating on whether, okay, what are my options here? Should I take this all the way to Seattle now and then try to stay 6 hours in the rain, then get a 3.5 hour bus back to Vancouver? Like that would have taken some real might, but as strong as of a person I am, that wasn't gonna happen. The thought process I had during that train was, and you know what, I admittedly would think like half of these problems would not be irrelevant if I was sitting in a sleeper. Now, considering with the Canadian US dollar, it was probably not viable for 370 Canadian out of pocket to go to go from coach to a roomette. I honestly think it would have been half as bad if I was in a roomette, but that was pretty bad in coach. I'm a pretty good sleeper with airplane seats, and sleeping on that train last night, even being laid out on my side, it was all right. I mean, I've had better sleeps, I've had worse sleeps on planes, and considering I was like half on my side, way more reclined than I would on a plane, yeah, I didn't sleep that great. And lucky thing, I took that restlessness and I used it the next morning to kind of counter the huge delay that we had. I think really the biggest problem with taking Amtrak and coach is just how many characters you come across. The staff on the train were actually fantastic. I love the staff on the train. They're so down to earth, like some of the most down to earth people that I've met, and they totally get it, and they know that there are some customaries that you would see on a train that are clearly not exhibited while flying, and it's just like everything that you expect from flying, because I fly so much and I very rarely take the train. You can take that out with Amtrak and just toss it out the window. Like, my God, there is just some people I clearly know that have mental health issues, and I mean, there's nothing you can really do about it, but it was just getting like really, really bad. Like I would try my best to like tone it out in terms of some of these people. Just like there's one woman just wouldn't stop laughing, people on their phones. This other woman that's clearly not in the greatest place. She has her 25-year-old son that's just a bit of a wreck, and then her 5-year-old grandson is just like just being too much of a kid and just too hyper, and I couldn't take it. And it was just getting way too much to deal with. But kind of what I'm going back to, I don't think that trip would have been half as bad if the people were kind of more content with how they are, because again, that gets tossed out the window with taking the train here in America. Now that I've kind of experienced this, you see a lot of people online, and I think like one of the best people that convey these experiences that I've seen firsthand is Noel Phillips. Like that guy does like crazy excursions. Like the last video I saw he did 6 days across Central America, and yeah, it's entertaining to see like what he kind of goes through, and it's just like 6 days. I'm like, that can't be bad, you got a good seat and everything, but you really don't know what that feels like until you experienced it. And I know I sound positive about that. No, it's not a happy experience in the slightest. It's actually frankly just mind-boggling. Like I'm a pretty positive guy, but my God, my morale on that train was like piss zero. Like it was nothing. I was texting a lot of my friends. Thank God there was self-service for the most part along the train. It was honestly struggling. I had never felt that down before in a very long time. And that being said, would I ever do the Coast Starlight ever again? Yeah, maybe I try it again in the summertime when delays aren't this bad with snowstorms. And that being said, will I continue to go on Amtrak? I mean, absolutely. Yeah, just not the long distance trains. Like I highly recommend the Cascades. Cascades was a fantastic experience. At least you're coming from across the border where you might not get some of the individuals you might come across south of the line here. If I were to do this again, with my friends like, I wish I was there with you on the train. I'm like, no, you don't want any of this. This is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. And for that, I say, you know what? If you really want the best experience of that train, Pacific Surfliner, I definitely do the Pacific Surfliner over what I just did, because again, the highlight of that trip was between LA and SLO. I definitely do that again in a heartbeat. Going the full length to Portland, no, I probably won't do that ever again, unless if I'm in a sleeper, and even that's gonna take a lot of willpower. So I don't really have more to say in that. I'll probably be trimming it quite a bit, but thanks for following me along during this experience. Like it's definitely not what I expected to be. My expectations might have been a little too high for Amtrak, as I honestly expected a good experience, but that was honestly pretty terrible to say at least. I'm even losing my voice here. So thanks again for watching, and feel free to drop a like and subscribe. And yeah, next time I'll see you in the air, and probably not on Amtrak for a very long time. So all right, thanks again.